What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast. Today I'm talking to Trent Knox. Trent is a personal trainer and the co-founder of the 440 Run Club, a run club that meets every Saturday morning in Bronte in the eastern suburbs in Sydney to do hill laps before the sun even rises. He is very vulnerable and open about sharing his personal story and is supporting people along their journeys with sharing the tools that he has accumulated over the years. He is passionate about exercise and keeping the body and the mind healthy. A beach lover, chances are you will run into him somewhere between Bondi and Bronte, and an overall amazing human being, and I'm so excited to have him here with me today. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine Podcast, Trent. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Sylvia.
Awesome. So, Trent, before we're heading into our conversation today, I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. So today we are talking about Trent's story. We are talking about his upbringing, his struggles with anxiety and addiction, and how he truly turned his life around. We are diving into the reasons why he started the 440 Run Club, the tools that are helping him with his mental health and well-being, and the importance of community. We are exploring how important being vulnerable and open in this world is, and how being your authentic self can support so many others around you on their journey. This is a conversation about struggle, healing, and ultimately a way to live a more fulfilled and content life with the right people along your side. I'm so excited about diving into all of this today. We've got a lot to do.
Ready to go.
So Trent, we've only just recently met.
Yes.
I would say. I messaged you on Instagram saying I would love to have you on the podcast because I remember reading an article about the 440 Run Club and your work there a couple of years ago now in the Sydney Morning Herald, and that's when I dotted your name down on my podcasting list of people that I would like to talk to at some point. And just over the last couple of weeks, I kept seeing you around Bondi and you kept coming back into my mind. So it's like, I'm going to reach out to you, and you very generously offered to sit down with me, but you had one condition, which was me coming down to the 440 Run Club on Saturday morning, which I did. So I was there. I'm pretty sure it was the first one there, second one. There was one guy there before me.
It's become a bit of a golden rule that, and we've had different organisations that have reached out and want to do some work with us, and we always insist that they come down and have a run or a walk or a shuffle and check it out so they actually understand what it really is, because I don't think social media doesn't do it justice.
Yeah.
It shows a group of people there in a group shot, it shows a few stories and videos, but it doesn't actually give you the full experience.
Totally. And I loved it. I was like, I'm definitely going to walk this because I haven't been for a run for a really long time. But then just the energy of everybody there, I was like, no, you know what, I'm gonna go for a run. And I started running and I actually ended up doing a few laps, which was awesome. So thanks for making me do that. I will definitely be back.
Thanks for coming.
So Trent, let's jump into it. Tell me a little bit about your background. What's your story?
So grew up in the eastern suburbs. Your mum and dad had their first home down in Sutherland Shire, and I think I was still under the age of 1. We moved over to Coogee. Mum wanted to be closer to her mum, who was in Paddington. Mum grew up in Paddington. Dad grew up around Glebe. So we moved to Coogee in 1979, and from an early age, my brother and I were into sports. Dad got us into a lot of sports. He was quite active. He was a rugby league player. Back in the day, you would call himself, what they call themselves, a fitness crank, so always training. That was a big part of his life, training with mainly men, a lot of group training. He thought that was a good way to keep us out of trouble and keep us busy in sports, and try, look, like every parent, trying to give your kids the best start in life. So we did a whole bunch of different things. Funnily enough, one of the biggest sports he got us into early was swimming. And I think it was just, he wasn't a swimmer himself. He could swim. Mum didn't swim. She had fear of water. So we did it from an early age, and that then rolled into doing a lot of surf life saving and nippers. And then we played all the school sports, rugby league and, water polo. And we were always busy doing sports. So our whole life was predominantly running around doing that. Got through school, didn't really enjoy school, looking back on it. Got a job in real estate a few years after school finished. I was still doing quite a lot of sports. Always involved with community and, through surf clubs, and I guess always being on hand to help where I could, with anyone at sort of any capacity. And, I think looking back now, the fitness side of things was probably the platform that I lent on for a long time, in good times and in rough times. And then, I got into real estate for a number of years. I sort of got to a good position. I learned a lot. I became quite successful, but, what I deem as successful now is what success was back then has changed. Mm. And then, in short of it, and I guess one of the reasons we're here today is to talk about the 440, and about 7 years ago, I accidentally started a run club in Bronte. Started in the dark and in my darkness, and and here we are today.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me a little bit more about your upbringing. We're going to go through all of it a little bit in more detail, but what was it like and how has it shaped you? You said like your dad and your parents have really gotten you a lot into sport and into exercise, kind of keep you out of trouble as well, I guess, by getting you into sport. How has your upbringing shaped you, and what was it like also from an emotional and supportive way, I guess?
Look, there was a very loving family, but, I guess like something conditional love, not always unconditional. I love my dad to death. His communication skills are pretty average based on his upbringing.
They always do as much as they can do, right? Based on their own experience. Yeah.
And what I've learned and through my own therapy and understanding is that they do the best with what they've got.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think to get to that stage where I understand that and I love them more is because I've done the work to understand. It's like the people around me. I turn up and give my best every day, and in some people's opinion, my best is not enough, but that's what they're experiencing. So I guess my father had a rough upbringing himself, so he wanted to give us the best, and I guess that gets in the way of really understanding what's going on with your children. And so keeping us busy in sport, wanting us to be the best, I felt there was a lot of pressure, which created a lot of anxiety at an early age. They worked really hard to send my brother and I to a private school. There was pressure around that. There was something within me back then that just, I loved some things, but I didn't like a lot of other things. And I guess given my dad's upbringing, he was a very hard man. So a lot of discipline, and, mum was my go-to, and my dad was my brother's go-to. So I guess we split off at an early age, and, I was always ducking and weaving dad and always going in the comfort of mum, and my brother was always ducking and weaving mum and going in the comfort of dad. And I guess growing up and being in that environment, I didn't really feel like I had the opportunity to figure out who I was and get an understanding of what made me tick, what I loved, where I was passionate. I think it's really easy to get caught up with, running your kids around all over Sydney doing sports, when you don't really stop and ask them, hey, do you really want to do this? I guess a lot of parents would argue that kids don't know what they want. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I think that there's certainly opportunity to figure out where kids' passions are.
Yep.
In the arts and creative and, outside the sporting sort of field. And I think that I've found, creativity later in life. Sport I enjoyed, but there were many moments over many years that I didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I think it wasn't until I got a bit older and I was sort of going out and racing on my own that I really enjoyed it, because I trained for myself. But when you're under the supervision of your parents and they're driving you around everywhere, you feel obligated that you've got to perform because they're giving up their time and they're spending all this money. And parents don't realise that there's a lot of pressure with that. Mm-hmm. But they don't know any different. Mm. So they're, again, working hard to provide, but no one ever really stops and says, hang on, like, we're spending all this money. Do you really like doing this?
Yeah.
And you've got to be very careful with that, because you don't want to seem ungrateful at the same time, because they're giving you all the things that they didn't have.
Well, a lot of them are trying to live through you, right?
Correct, yeah. They're doing their best. That's like, the end of the day, that's what they're doing. How they deliver it, it's not always great. but they're trying.
Yeah, yeah.
And look, what I've learned in my life now, sometimes you can try too hard. Sometimes you just got to take your foot off the pedal and you let things just happen on their own.
Totally.
And sometimes, not responding to something is the right response.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't fix everything, and not everything needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you don't need to go to the gym, and sometimes you don't need to go in that race. Sometimes you don't need to enter another hobby or sport. Sometimes you can just chill out.
Be, right?
Just be.
Yeah.
And so going back to your question, looking back now, my childhood was good, but it was up and down. It was busy, and there was trauma attached to it. There was, I guess, success at that time, but again, my view on success has changed substantially. And I've had to go back and sort of revisit some of that stuff and get an understanding of, my patterns in behaviour as an adult and why I behave in certain ways and why things trigger me, and we all sort of come to realise that it comes from childhood.
Yeah. You said a few really interesting things there, and the first one, you said that parents a lot of the time don't think that the kids know who they are.
Yeah.
And that is it's an interesting statement, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at like some more updated writing and thinking these days around that topic, we are actually born the way we are, and then everything else that comes on top of that is just conditioning, is just, the environment, parents, teachers, whoever it is, conditioning us into being
society
something
and
else.
the guidelines.
So actually listening to your children in that instance is actually the best thing that you can do. And yes, they need guidance, obviously, because they are kids, but they have this real innate truth inside of them, right? Which I think back in the day definitely wasn't like the norm to think like that. It was like, I'm the adult, I show you, I show you the way, and I show you what to do and how to think, kind of thing. But the other thing that you said was you didn't really know who you were. You were doing all those things and you were enjoying them sometimes. You kind of felt like you had to do them on other times, but you didn't really know who you were. So what was your journey like, trying to figure out who you were? Like, when did that kind of realization come in, where you went like, well, wait a second, who am I actually? Or who's the real Trent, without everything that people are trying to put on me, around me?
Yeah, I guess the feeling's always been there. I never really addressed it. I remember, it's like winning your school athletics carnival. Why are you winning? Popularity, to say you won, and that's at an early age. You're winning at a state level or Australian level to impress your parents, make your parents happy. They've invested all this time and money into taking you around the country, and you've got to win. And whether you like it or not, or they feel that's part of it, there's an investment. And looking at, you think if you win, you're popular, or you get a good mark at school, you're popular, or particular people, you're popular.
It's always based on external things,
where do I
right?
fit in, and how will I be accepted? And looking back at the time, like, I always felt like, you always feel like you're working hard to be accepted, and sometimes getting rejected from someone, it doesn't feel good, and you then trying to get that hit again and that fix. And I guess then you get through school and you get graded, and determines where you're going to go and study or not study, or where you get a job, and what kind of a job, who you're working for, what it pays you, what it allows you to do. And I felt that, growing up with some of my mates, they were all in different professions. I got into real estate and I enjoyed it, and I started becoming good at it. I never felt like they respected what I did. When right now, like, what I know, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter whether they respected it or not. It's something, if I loved it, it made me happy, great. But coming back to it, when you don't know whether you're doing the right thing, it's very hard to identify who you are and what your purpose is, and just why you're throwing the question is that when you don't know who you are and you're doing things for an unknown reason, then to me it sort of says you've got no purpose in what you're doing. And when I was in real estate and I was in the thick of it and I was doing really well, I used to have this underlying feeling of, I won't be doing this forever. I never saw myself being there for another 20 or 30 years. I didn't see myself with a family and my kids coming into the office to visit me, and I couldn't work out why. And I used to love, it sounds silly, but I love my sneakers still, and I love my sneakers. Then I used to think that I'm just going to end up down the track in a pair of sneakers. because I love wearing them.
No sneakers in the real estate office, right?
No sneakers. Well, they do. Apparently they do now. They wear fancy white ones, and it's changed. And what I didn't realise, there was a signal there saying that, like, you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. You're not serving what you're meant to be serving. You know, the turning point for me in finding out who I was when, you know, I'd gone down a really dark hole with alcohol and substance abuse, which has been over, you know, a particular number of years and just spiraled out of control. And I was using alcohol and drugs to numb down what was going on inside and to fit in and to socialise. And, you know, it was also then numbing down the stress of the job that I was trying to hold down and be good at that. And, you know, it was cause for celebration, it was cause for commiserations, you know, breakups, or, you know, you've had some sort of success in something that's not even important. And then eventually the more I didn't understand who I was, and the more that any stress that would come to the surface, I would drink. And then eventually, which I know now, is that you see it any form of addiction, it will progressively get out of control if you don't get help.
Yeah.
And when you don't know who you are and you don't have a connection to yourself, then you don't put yourself first. You know, there's no love for yourself, there's no care for yourself, you're not putting yourself ahead of anyone, everyone else comes first. So, you know, I went into sobriety about 10 years ago through a friend. I tried, wrestled with it for a year or two. It didn't work because I wasn't getting the appropriate help. I had made a decision that I had to remove, you know, alcohol and substances out of my life because they didn't work. But, you know, fast forward to the last 3 years, and I'm just over 3 years sober now, and a psychologist I've been working with closely, even before I went back into sobriety. When I went back in, and I'd already seen him previously, one of the things that he put in front of me, he said, Trent, you know, your job while you're here on earth is to find out who you are. He said most people go through their whole life and never get to the bottom of that. And he said that's important. And he said, you know, and at the time I didn't understand it. But basically how I found out who I was very lucky that, you know, having a connection to this community, we started doing a daily video to our account on the 30th of March when we went into lockdown and we had to shut the run clubs down, and we started doing a video every day. I was still having the odd drink then. And then by June, I'd had my last drink, and I'd gone back to my psychologist. I'd gone back into AA. I started getting help. And the defining moment for me was I was getting up early and doing these videos. I was either doing pre-recorded or live, but either way, they were being shot in the dark in the morning. And my business partner and mate, Toddy, when I'd gone back into the rooms and started getting help, he said, look, I'm a bit concerned that if you continue doing the morning chats, that's going to throw you out of whack again, because I think it's too much of a commitment for you. And I was quite vulnerable, and, you know, I was quite broken, and I'd hit a rock bottom. That was my last rock bottom that I hit. And I didn't have the strength to argue with him. I just said, okay, let me think about it. And then about a week later, I came to the conclusion that this coffee club chat and getting up for it every day could potentially get me sober and save my life, because I had to be committed to it. And what I realised over several months of getting up and then getting in front of this camera every morning, it got to a point where I realised that I had no script, I had no plan, and I stopped worrying about what people thought about what I was recording, what I was uploading. And I could just turn up and just be me, and the camera was blowing over some days. I'd forget my lines, I'd swear at the camera. And when I started watching it back, I could see this level of ease come into the way I was carrying myself, and I just monitored it. And then we started doing it live instead of a pre-recording, and I realised I could stand in front of that camera and say whatever I wanted to say. I didn't have to think about what I wanted to say. I didn't have to review anything. I didn't have to go looking for it. I just allowed it to come up in the moment, and I went, that's me. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And I still don't know how to describe who I am, but if you want to see who I am, you can pull up any episode of the Coffee Club. It's just me being me. How that's related to my life now is that I can walk into any room and be me, and not worry about that I identify as an alcoholic or an addict. You know, that, you know, whether I've upset someone and I've hurt people back in, you know, my drinking days, that I know that I'm a good human being and that I'm trying, and I'm, you know, and I want to be better, and I try and I practice it every day. And And the fact that I fell into this community, I now do it because I love it.
Yeah.
And I love it. Helps me, it helps people, it gives me purpose. For me, it's a higher power. And I wake up every morning looking forward to being part of it. So that's how I got to a point where I could identify with who I was or who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're really living your true, authentic
Yeah.
self by doing what you're doing right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, Trent, you've talked very openly about, your time with addiction. What was it like for you to go through this dark time? What was some of the things that you were thinking or feeling at that time?
Yeah.
And when did you kind of feel like I really want to get out of that again as well?
Well, I think, addiction for me, and what I come to realise, addiction's the opposite of connection. And I try and live a life now, I try and simplify everything. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I look at people around me live really complicated lives because they just don't simplify. If I'm not connected to myself, I'm in addiction. And I was in addiction, and the addiction for me was numbing myself because I didn't want to sit still. I didn't want to get to know who I am. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to put myself first. So it just meant that the trauma that I'd accumulated since childhood, and that's trauma just within family, then relationships, jobs, you name it. It just compounded. And I had no outlet. I had no tools. I didn't know what getting help was. I had a meditation mantra, I didn't use it. And so essentially as the stress was compounding, then my using started compounding. And any sign of danger, drink. Mm. And then eventually you start building up a tolerance to it. So instead of going out and celebrating, you start doing it at home on your own. And you isolate, and then you stop turning up for things. You stop being reliable and responsible. You're not around. And then so all it was, I wasn't having fun. My life wasn't getting any better. It was just self-sabotage, self-destruction. It was like I wasn't giving anything, I wasn't putting anything back into me. I wasn't being kind to myself. And, some people think that when their friends are using and partying that they're actually having the time of their life. They're not. Mm. And, it just got to a point where something was going to give. Something stupid was going to happen and you end up in jail or you take your life. But, look, I'm lucky that it never really got to a point where maybe I thought about it a couple of times, but nothing that I actually took any action. And, I still say this today, and someone said this to me, Matt Ringrose actually said it to me. Mm. I just said to him, I don't understand why I'm still around. I don't understand why I just keep going through this. And he said, there's something out there more powerful than you that wants to keep you around a bit longer.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that makes sense because I just keep torturing myself and keep punishing myself and I haven't surrendered. And that was probably in June 2020, I surrendered.
Yeah.
I'd had enough.
So was that the turning point?
Yes, it was me surrendering. It was also me sitting in front of Todd at a cafe and, we had a chat. He said, I'm really worried about you. He said, there's been people that have mentioned things about you over a period of time which I've just chosen to ignore because I see something else in you. And I see you do all this wonderful stuff. I see you're happy, you're helping all these people, you're turning up, and then you go into this dark space, you disappear for a day or two, and it scares me, and I'm scared I'm going to get a phone call that you're no longer with us.
That must have been really hard to hear for you as
well.
well.
Yeah, you got a guy sitting opposite you saying he's scared, and I'm like, fuck, yeah, and I'd had enough, I was broken, and I've shared this several times. He just said, what can I do? He genuinely wanted to help. He's like, I'll do anything for you. And I went, sort of looked at him and laughed, and he's like, what are you laughing at? And I said, I've just had a lightning bolt moment. I didn't know what it was at the time, but the realisation that he couldn't do anything apart from be a mate. There's nothing he could do apart from just say, I love you, I'm your mate, I'm there. It was that moment I realised that it was entirely up to me on what would happen and what the next day would look like and the next day after that. And, and then I got up and I hugged him. I said, I've got to go. He's like, where are you going? And it was, it was like 11:45. There was a meeting about to start in 15 minutes. And, that day I took myself to a meeting.
Which meeting?
An AA meeting. Mm. And, I knew there was one on and I just stuck my backside to the seat. And for the first time, I could hear what people were saying, I could hear the stories, and I started relating to them. And, you know, I realised then that the only way through this, and the only way to have a good life, was I have to do something for myself and be kind to myself and start practicing self-love and all that stuff, and getting help and leaning on people and putting myself in someone else's hands. It was the only way I had a chance of survival and the only chance of living and you know, I guess starting a new life. And I just kept it simple. I went to meetings every day. I went back to my psychologist. It took me a week to, you know, navigate with Todd whether I'd do the coffee club and continue that, and we sat down and discussed it. And just on that, when he put it to me, I was quite vulnerable. And the first reaction was, well, no, I don't want to stop because I don't want people to talk about me, and I don't want, what will people think if I stop doing this thing, was the first thing. So, you know, my pride and my ego.
Yeah.
And I said, just let me think about it. And then he did. And about 5 or 6 days later, I was like just struggling getting out of bed. But I'm like, I'm going to do this coffee club every day. I'm going to put on a brave face. I'm going to go to AA. And I kept doing that. And I knew, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to sustain this. Like, I was just like holding my breath. And I remember sitting at a cafe. And I don't know what happened, but something happened in that moment where I was sitting there looking at my coffee, and I've always believed that the 440 will be something wonderful and it'll turn into something beautiful and it will help a lot of people. And I've never capped what it will look like. And I said to myself, if I surrender to this and I accept that I cannot drink or take a drug or, you know, ever again, and I just look after myself and I follow suggested steps and I ask for help and I lean in on people and I lean in on this community, that the 440 will grow into something beautiful. And that will happen. And I knew in my heart that it will be successful if I throw that away. And that was sort of option, you know, door number 1. And door number 2, I said to myself, okay, like, clean yourself up. You can have a break from, you know, drinking. Get yourself in order. And if you decide you want to have a drink, you can. I thought, if I do that, then within a short period, I will completely destroy the 440 and everything it stands for. It will burn to the ground. And again, my ego stepped in and said, and you'll be the guy that go, whatever happened to that guy? Whatever happened to the 440? And instead of the ego, you know, taking control and go, well, you can't let that happen, I just said, I'm curious to see where it goes. And that's all I wanted to be, was curious. And I thought, okay, so if you're going to be curious, you can't drink. If that's all you want to do right now is be curious to see where it goes, then the condition is you can't drink. And that's all I did. And I made a decision that I'd never pick up another drop. And, you know, and I promised myself I would do something kind for myself every day, like an AA meeting, getting in the ocean, exercising, practicing my mindfulness. And there's not a day now that doesn't go by that I'm not doing. Like, I've exercised, I've meditated, you know, I'll be in the ocean later this afternoon, and I do it effortlessly. And that was what I looked at, what my definition of addiction now as to what it was before. It's not about the substances, it's avoiding finding out who you are, and it's avoiding sitting with yourself, and it's avoiding getting to know yourself. And when you get to know yourself and you're connected to yourself, then the connection to the people around you is just, it's so profound. And, you know, when I'm not connecting with other people, it means my connection to myself is broken. And I've got to check in on that. Like, when I'm isolating, I'm saying no to things like, okay, what's going on? You know, there might be a bit of pity going on or whatever it is, but I know what I can tap into now, and I'm tapping into it daily.
Amazing. There was so much in there again, Trent. One of the things that you said that you couldn't really sit still. You weren't allowing yourself to sit still because it's almost like you're not able to just listen to your own thoughts and actually figure out who you are. And I think that is almost a bit of I don't want to call it a pandemic, but, you know, you see that a lot these days, I think, of people just keeping so busy and their schedule so full that they don't actually have time to sit down. And I think a lot of it is not so much that they can't sit down, but that they actually don't want to sit down and sit with their own thoughts and look at their life and see what they're actually doing. Because it is really overwhelming, is it, when you first start doing that, and when you start being with your thoughts and start looking at where you are, you're like, yeah, it is overwhelming. There's just no other way.
It's excruciating.
Yeah,
it's
painful.
Like pulling teeth. Yeah, you know, like it is. But, you know, like, and I've got a really dry sense of humour. And I say this with respect, and given the work I've done and where I think I'm sitting in my, you know, in my world now, I sit back and watch people running around completely off their heads. It's like a big live game of pinball.
Yeah.
and I can see what's around their corner before them. And they are doing everything but sitting still and getting to understand and know themselves. And, you know, I also know that there's nothing I can do. They just have to hit a wall.
Yeah.
And for the people in my network and in community, there's no point me intervening and telling them to stop, because they have to experience it. And I just
100%.
make myself available, because they've got to go through it. They've got to hit that wall, and they've got to hit that rock bottom. And this is the problem. We try and stop people from hitting the rock bottom, which is what I had all these people love and cared about me and trying to stop me from hitting that rock bottom. My view is now let them hit it. Let them hit them, and you know, it just makes sure that you make them aware that you're always there.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do, because what it comes back to with me while they're running around like lunatics is I've got to keep my hands on my own steering wheel at all times. It is like, and you know, people are made to feel guilty through our guidelines and our rules and our communities and society and all this sort of stuff, that you've got to be there for everyone, and you can't. You know, you can't do it. It's impossible. You know, like what I've learned is that by me looking after me, I can lead by example. And if I keep looking after me and I'm having the best experience I can in my own life, there's people observing that going, I want what you got. And I'm going, cool.
Yeah.
This is how I got it. And I can show them, because they're still got to go and do the work. I can't give them a magic pill, but I can share my experience with them. I can't fix their problems. I can't tell them what's right or wrong. But, you know, and to quote Matt Ringrose, you know, he put this so elegantly many years ago. Because even I was doubting Matt. This is before I went in sobriety. I was just, you know, you doubt everyone, and you know, when your issues are everyone else's issues. And I was sitting at one of his conscious meetings one night, and I'm thinking, how does he know everything? Like, well, how do we know he's right? And that was just,
you know, Matt knows everything.
But that was just me being ignorant to the fact that he doesn't know everything. And anyway, I'd been thinking about this for a while, but I didn't have the guts to question him. Anyway, we turned up one Monday night, and this lady, she asked the question for me. She said, how do we know you know everything? How do we know what you say is right? And, you know, she was putting it to him, and my ears pricked up, and I went, oh, this will be good. I can't wait to hear this. And, you know, he said, look, it's a good question. He said, look at it this way. I'm climbing, and he's talking about it from his own experience. He said, I'm climbing my own mountain in life. We're all climbing our own mountains. Every one of you here tonight, you've got your own mountain. I'm on mine, you're on yours. But he said, would it be fair to say that you're all meditators now, I've been a teacher, would it be fair to say I'm probably a little bit higher up on my mountain than you? And everyone's like, yep, completely agree. Okay, good, we all agree to that. He said, when you ask me a question about what you're experiencing and what you're going through, and I'm looking on top of my mountain, and he said, by no means am I anywhere near the top of mine. He said, if I look down on your mountain, there's a good chance that the bend you're about to go around, I've probably been there. And if the question is around that bend and I can relate to it, then I can share my experience of how I came around that bend. And when I heard that, I thought, you know what, like that's someone that's not giving life advice. He's just sharing his journey and sharing his experience. And then what I also learned in that moment was that, and this was part of how I have been successful in recovery, is I worked out that what I was experiencing, other people had gone through before me. Yeah. So it helped me get rid of a lot of shame and guilt on things that had happened to me in growing up, experiences that I'd had that I'd never wanted to share. I was too embarrassed and ashamed. I used to think I used to pioneer all my dumb shit.
You think you're the only person, right, going through it. Yeah.
And you're not.
Yeah.
And I've never done anything now that someone hasn't done before, and I've done some pretty, like, weird stuff. Yeah. Because, you know, and that's a representation of the headspace you're in. But when I heard Matt say that, I thought, that's pretty cool. I don't ever have to give anyone advice, or if I don't know something, I don't have to make it up. I can just share. And now that I've got, you know, over 3 years of sobriety up, and the run club's now over 7 years, I can share that journey.
Yeah. And
someone may relate to that. And I think that's the power of, I'm only wiser because I've lived through this and I've sought help, and I'm open to getting help, and I don't shut down, and I tried my very best every day to stay connected to myself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like what Matt was talking about as well, you know, and just to reference him, so Matt Ringrose, he's Trent and mine, both of our meditation teacher, and he works out of the Bonner Meditation Center. And I think it's that concept around you can only bring people around you as far as you have been yourself. Also when we're looking at levels of consciousness and stuff, you can only help the people that are kind of below you, so to speak, that haven't been there. Like somebody who is like way ahead of you won't probably come to you for help, And so same with you, like now being 3 years into sobriety and having that experience, and having the Run Club for so long, like there's people that are only just starting that journey. So you've got so much valuable insights and, tools that you've accumulated over the years that are so helpful for the people that are only just starting out, right? So I think that's really important, because I think that can be a bit of a human trait as well, to think, oh, who am I going to help? Like, how am I going to be able to make a difference? But, the thing is, like, the right people will always find you. The people that need to hear what you've gone through will always find you. I think that's really important. And then the other thing, because when you were talking just before about that you can't help other people, like you can share your experience, but you can't help them. And that's the same what's happened to you, right? When you were saying, like, you were sitting there with Todd and he said, how can I help you? And it was this penny drop moment where you're like, well, you can be here for me as a friend, but I have to do it myself. And I think that is such an important message, because a lot of the time we feel like we have to help other people and we have to support them, and we can be there for them, but they need to have that wish to change things for themselves. Otherwise, things are never going to change,
They've got to get out of their own way.
Exactly.
And if you look at what we've created with the Run Club, Todd and I got to a time where we stopped begging people to come, because it's like a dog walker, There's only so many dogs you can walk, right? You can't walk every dog. And you can't help everyone. You can't save everyone. And what we found was, if I turn up every Saturday because it's good for me, and I get myself out of bed when I'm in a good mood or in a bad mood, and people that know me well, I turn up many Saturdays in a bad mood because I'm just tired and I'm just cranky. All I need to do is turn up. And so if people want what I've got, they've got to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And because I go there for me, and if they start with something so simple like drag yourself out of bed in the dark, stick your shoes on, get out the door. Like, we spoke about yourself, like it didn't matter what you did last Saturday. The most important part was getting there. When you start doing that and we stop begging people, people know where to find me. If you want to find me on a Saturday morning, all you do is turn up at Bronte, and why? Because it works. I need to be there.
So for people that don't know what the 440 Run Club is, let's go into that in a little bit more detail. So where did the idea start? Yes. Sure. What's the concept, and how does it work for people who haven't heard of it?
Well, we've covered a lot today about, my journey, and I call it my darkness. And I've been through dark periods, and so back in 2016, probably the start of 2016, I was doing some running with some mates. And we were doing these hill sprints at Bronte it's the old tram line, which is called the Cutting. And we used to meet every Saturday morning, and it's 440 metres to the top. We needed to find something that was 400 metres, because what we were doing is taking what's a really popular track session, 400 metre efforts, and you do them on repeat. You do a 400, you have a minute or two break, and you go again, and it's a really good way. 400 is a really tough distance. It's not a sprint, it's not too long. So we put it on the hill, because running hills is hard, it's good for your fitness. So we took that concept, we'd sprint to the top, walk back, and we'd go again. And over about a 5 or 6 month period, we all got fit and fast, like ridiculous. Yeah. And what I don't share enough about, but growing up, I hated running hills. My brother was really good at it. My dad used to make me do it, and I hated it. I used to cry and kick and scream. Yeah. And Dad would throw a shoe at me, and he just made me do everything I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
So I grew up hating hills, and then all of a sudden I found myself running hills, and I found out over that 5 or 6 month period, I actually learned how to run hills properly. I learned how to breathe properly, I learned how to lean into the hill. I really tapped into, the psyche of, how to run better hills. Long and short of it then, we finished off that block, and I wasn't in a good space. Like, I was in a really dark hole, and I was up and down, I was drinking, not drinking, having a break. And my idea of dealing with my problems was I'd have to hit a rock bottom, a big enough bender to scare the living daylights out of me, and I'd dry out. So I could easily stop, but I wasn't getting the right help. So I was making a transition out of real estate. I was doing some personal training. I think I'd finally made a decision to get out and finish the training block with the guys. And then for the next couple of Saturdays, I was turning up on my own and still running, as fast as I could. And I wasn't enjoying it. I was like, this sucks doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Really sucks. This is not fun. And I felt like I was really punishing myself. So then for the next week or two, I said, why don't I just loop it and just jog it out? 700 metres, a loop, 7K. You can do it in 30, 35 minutes. And then after a couple of weeks, I thought, this sucks. So I thought, why don't I just start inviting people? And then I thought, well, it's 440 metres the top. I went on Instagram, I set up an account and called it the 440. And then I put an invitation out on the 16th of June in 2016 and said, hey, hill repeats, hill sprints, whatever you want to call it, come in and join us. I turned up on the Saturday and it was just me. And I ran it on my own, and then I took a photo of the hill, and that was our first post on the 18th of June. So then for the next couple of years, I was just trying to rally people, but I had no idea what I was doing. I had no vision of creating a run club or a community. I just wanted to help people. I thought, come and run it. And everyone was like, it's too early, I don't do hills, don't want to do it, and telling me to get lost and get stuffed. And I was begging people, then I'd get the shits with people. I resented everyone. And then during that couple of year period, I was not turning up some Saturdays too, because I'd been on, I was out still. I was either intoxicated or using, or I was hungover. And people would just go and do it. And then in 2018, I'd reconnected with Todd. We'd met each other several years before. I begged him to come down. It took me about a month or two to get him to come down, because he was a big guy, a lot of CrossFit, playing rugby.
And it's an early morning.
Early morning, Saturday. He's like, he goes,
five.
I'm not getting up for this thing. And eventually he did, and he fell in love with it. And then, the more we hung out, we realised we had a lot in common. Started spending more time with a lot of older mates in common. He started falling in love with it. He'd had experience in the fitness space, and then we just started and having more fun on social media, putting up funny gags of like Justin Bieber running and Madonna and, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we just tried to bring humour to this whole thing of like humour to the fact we were getting people up in the dark, humour to the fact we're running up hills, and humour to the fact we're doing it also in winter. And then, I think during those periods, I was still doing my little disappearing acts and not turning up. And then we got into sort of 2019, and then, I don't know, all of a sudden, we've been, floating around for a couple of years now. I noticed a bunch of girls. There was a pattern. There were more girls coming and more groups of girls. And they were curious. And now some people are like, why are these guys doing it? What are they up to? Why are they there? And the girls are like, oh, we don't care. We're just going to go and run. And then the more girls that turn up, the more people turned up. And then it went from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50. And next month we're at 70. And the more people that gathered every week, the more content I'd put out. And then we're sharing more stories, and then the group photo was getting bigger, and we always made sure we put this group photograph up each week, because it just told everyone that we were there.
Yeah.
It was a reminder that we turned up. We turn up on the rainy days, we turn on the windy days, we turn up on the hot days, on the cold days. And then by the end of 2019, we had momentum, and we were getting in excess of 100 people.
Wow.
And then it became a run, dip, sip, because we were running together, we were dipping together, and we were going and get coffee. And it all just sort of come together. And then, I was still masquerading that everything was okay on the surface for me. And I call it committing fraud. I was leading this community, but I wasn't leaning in on my own community. I wasn't being honest. But I knew that I had to keep turning up. I knew that maybe eventually the habits would subside and everything would be okay. And, like I said, we got into 2020 and then we went into a lockdown. So I actually got sober during a lockdown, which a lot of people went the other way. People became addicted and became out. The alcoholism really came to the surface because they were isolated. Where, I had a Vedic reading, astrology reading the other month, and Mairead, Matt's partner, said that you actually got sober during a very hard period in your sort of universal sort of cycle. Yeah. And the way I sort of identify with that, it's like trying to run the 440 with a bunch of bricks on your back. And I think the fact that I went through that period, it was a tough time to get sober. It's built stronger foundations and a stronger connection to myself. And now today, going back to the 440, we're an inclusive face-to-face community. And, We start our day in the dark. It's gone from just being a Saturday run club to an everyday club that we run together Saturdays, but we've got a platform, the Coffee Club, a live chat that we can connect to our community every day. And
beautiful.
Mental, physical and spiritual health, in my opinion, it's an everyday job.
It is.
We've got to chip away at it every day. And so when I made a commitment to do the Coffee Club every day, 1, it kept me sober, 2, it gave me purpose, and 3, it's allowed this community to continue to grow and thrive.
And so what's your motto? I know we start in the dark,
Yep.
It's like literally before the sun is even thinking about rising.
Well, we start in the dark was a joke. Like, it was actually just a blank statement. It's like, oh, we start in the dark, as in that's what we do. And then I remember writing it one day on a post or a story. It's like, we start in the dark. Hey, we're the 440, we start in the dark. And then when I started to really go deeper into this community and the connection to myself, I was like, hang on, like, we do start in the dark. We're born in the dark. If you're learning to run for the first time, you start in the dark. It's a dark place because you're full of fear. Starting a new job, it's again fear, anxiety, a new relationship, or coming out of a toxic relationship and having to start again. And we come in and out of this darkness and we experience darkness. And then I really started to understand because when it was growing, I'm like, why is this thing growing? Like, pulling it apart, and we're trying to reverse engineer it or whatever. And what I realized is we all experience darkness. And what has helped me have a better life is that I developed a relationship with my darkness. And by getting up in the dark every day, I realized that the darkness is our ally. It's not our enemy, and it's not there to sabotage us. So it's like, there's nothing in the world that's there to sabotage me. It's conscious decisions that I make every day that will determine, how the day unfolds, or what I'm doing today will determine what happens tomorrow. And all we've tried to do now is help people build a relationship with their darkness. And if it's running, we can help you. We're not going to show you how to run, but we're going to show you how to get out of bed. And if you're too scared to run, come and run in the dark so no one can look at you.
But you know what? It's funny that you say that, because I thought that as well. I thought about it afterwards, because people were like, first of all, my husband was laughing at me when I said to him I was going to go to the 440 run club. He was like, you haven't run for a really long time. And then I came home and I was like, you underestimate me a lot, because I ran a lot of loops. But what I found interesting, and I tried to dissect it even in my own brain, because I was like, I really enjoyed it, because I didn't think I was going to enjoy it. I was like, this is going to be painful for me. But I actually really enjoyed it. I actually loved it. And I was like, why did I love it? And I think there's obviously a few factors, right? There's the excitement of doing it for the first time. But then there's also the community aspect of, everybody's running. So you just feel the energy. It's like, doing yoga in your own living room versus doing it in a class. There's just something about doing exercise with people that I think is different. And then there was the darkness. I actually really enjoyed running in the dark. And maybe it was a bit of, hiding from the world and hiding from everybody else that was there, because I'm not as fit as I would like to be. But yeah, there was something really comforting and nice about that. And then you even said that at the beginning, you were like, it's such a beautiful morning, look up into the stars. And I just kind of ran up that hill a couple of times and just looked up, and it was just such a beautiful moment. And then, afterwards, you do the photo, and then the sun started coming up. And I don't know, it just, I'm still dissecting it, but I really did enjoy that.
Yeah, and I think, like to your point, what you said, you've got all these people moving, and there's these just silhouettes of these people. Whereas if you're in the daytime, you're worrying about, is my left foot and the right foot hitting the ground properly? What are people thinking about how I run? Why is that guy looking at me for? And where all you've got is this series of people heading in the one direction, and it's just a loop. So no one's turning back on each other, so no one's really looking at anyone. And then you do it under the cover of darkness, and you just see these bodies moving peacefully. There's no real struggle, because no one's trying to win. No one's trying to be better than anyone else. No one's told they've got to do 10 laps. No, there's no anxiety around how many laps they do. You don't know.
Yeah.
Someone might be doing 1 lap, some might be doing 10 laps. No one knows, no one cares. And no one's telling you you're running wrong. No one's telling you you're not doing it properly. We're not telling you how to do anything. Like you said before, you came to walk.
I did.
But you made a decision when you saw everyone else moving. It's like, and I'm just guessing, you're sort of, well, hang on, they're running, she's running, he's running. why can't I run?
Well, it was more like I'm just going to start running and see how far I get, and then otherwise I start walking.
And then you stop with your permission. You're not
Yeah.
stopping and then being ridiculed because you stopped. And like, you reminded me, a lot of people come down there and forget to look up. And that's okay, because they're coming down, they're trying to shake off something. And quite often, and I do it every now and then, I'll be running. It's harder now because there's so many people, but I might be running next to a guy and you see and I'm sort of trying to describe this, his shoulders are up around his ears and he's so rigid and so like, and he's worried, and you can see he's worried about someone's passing him, and I'll just go up and just whack him in the thigh. And they sort of spook and jump, and I'm like, mate, breathe. I'll go, look at that. And I'll point to the skyline and what it is. They've come down knowing they're in the right place. They're not sure how they should be acting or sure they should be behaving, or am I in the right place? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not fast enough? What if I'm not wearing the right shoes? And now I'm there to remind them, hey, irrelevant. You have fun and breathe. And some of these guys look amazing, like they're chiseled body and they weigh their food and they lift heavy weights, but they don't enjoy any of it. And all of a sudden they come and run. And I watch these guys over 6 to 12 months, their whole body shape changes. Because then the reason and the way they were training and living, there's no enjoyment. Now they're allowed to come and move freely. And they get a taste of what it feels like to move well, to feel part of something, to experience the solitude in the morning. And there's so much power in that, because further to that, and you talk about the 440 and why it works, we do it's our signature and our DNA is Saturday morning. And I talk about this a lot. Saturday morning, to me, is the most powerful morning of the week, because it's the hardest morning to get up. We've either had a big week of work, because our society breeds that we work Monday to Friday, and that's how most of it works. So we flog ourselves from Monday to Friday. We squeeze every last drop of it, and that's socialising, exercising and working and family and all that stuff. You're either going out Friday night to celebrate, commiserate or numb yourself, or you're too exhausted, you go to bed and you tell yourself that you need a sleep in. What we're doing, we're dragging all those people out of bed, kicking and screaming, and we're going, hey, here's another option. How about let's help you wash the week off, even if you come and walk, even if you come and have a light jog. And eventually they work out that they run too hard, they ruin their weekend. But they're allowed to, and this is directed mostly at the men, they only want to turn up when they're fit and strong and fast. They don't want to turn up when they're not the fastest. So we're slowly breaking that stigma. We're getting them out of bed and go, hey, what's wrong with walking 2 laps with your best mate?
Yeah.
Having a download on how rough your week was.
Yeah.
And then having a swim. Then by 8 o'clock, if you feel good, go to the gym. And we're breaking it up, because we're getting you up on the hard. Now guess what? When we're getting our community up on the hardest day, guess what anyone who's not connected to our community is doing? They're sleeping. Streets are dead. Streets are empty.
The streets were very empty.
They're empty. So when you're a non-runner or you're overweight or you don't feel like you belong, you've only got one concentrated group of people. You don't have to worry about anyone else watching you. So you start becoming a runner under the cover of darkness. You get to learn how to run under the cover of darkness. You get to improve your sense of being under the cover of darkness. Where in daylight, we don't want to. We don't want to look out of place. We don't want to look like we run like a giraffe.
Yeah.
And that's where society's got to. And this is not a rant. It's more like we are always worried about what other people think. We are living in a world in a time of comparison. And that's why our community works. We're getting you up in the dark. We're getting you up when no one else is around. But you get to practice. And to a point you feel confident as a runner. And then you go and run in the daytime. Then you go and join a gym. And then you start doing your first adventure race for your first city to surf. And our job has become helping you get started, helping you get out of bed before sunrise. Going back to the coffee club, we're there to encourage and entice people to start their day in the dark every day. Get up before sunrise and you will get off on the right foot. It's worked for me, and I'm living proof. In over 3 years, I haven't missed a coffee club. I haven't missed a sunrise. It's become part of my...
every day?
Every day.
Wow.
I've done one coffee club at 9 a.m. because I dropped my phone and I had to log in on a friend of mine's iPad, and it was at 9 o'clock. But by 9 o'clock, I probably had a dozen messages from people checking if I was okay.
Yeah.
But it's become part of my life and I enjoy it. It's helping people, like we've said, gives me purpose. It keeps me connected.
Yeah.
you know, and it keeps me out of my darkness.
Yeah.
You know, by getting up in it.
And I love how you said, like, it doesn't matter, you know, even if you're not fit or even if you don't feel like running on a particular Saturday, just walk it, you know, just go for a walk and like you'll still feel better afterwards. And I loved how you said that at the end of the run as well, you know, like before the group photo, you did a bit of a spiel again and you were like, you know, who felt like they didn't run good enough today, you know, and some people put their hands up and you were like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you run 1 or 5 or 10 laps or if you walk or if you know, throw the towel after 5 minutes. It's just that you've actually turned up and that you've committed, right? And that you've been there. And I think that is such a good message because, like we said before as well, earlier in the conversation, a lot of the time we get valued by the things that we achieve. And, you know, a lot of gyms or a lot of like exercise groups you probably go to and they'll be like, no, you can do another one. Like, let's do another round. Let's do another one.
And if you don't do that extra one, then you carry it for the rest of the day.
Exactly. And I think that is such a beautiful message to just, you know what you've done today is enough because you've done exactly what you were able to do. And I think that is a really underrated message actually in this day's society and how we function just as people, you know.
Well, social media is comparison and, you know, there's social media can be used for the greater good. It can also be detrimental. You've got things like Strava. Strava, I think, is a wonderful tool because it records your progress and you can track how you're doing, but it's also a disadvantage when you're worrying about what your friend did. Your friend ran 22k this morning and you think, well, if he can do that, I can do that. So you go and book yourself in for 23k tomorrow when you haven't done the work, but you think you've done the work. And that's what's affecting a lot of people. They're breaking down because they're trying too hard, you know, and they don't realise that they're building up stress and compounding stress and injuries in their body. And, you know, I think that if you look at why these tools are there and you like, Instagram for me is a great tool because I always encourage our members to share when they come to the run or share when they get up for a sunrise or share when they have their post-training coffee with their group because they're then inspiring the people within that are following them. And eventually, like we said before, like when people see change in you, real change, and like, oh, he looks fit, but he sounds good, he looks happy, they want it.
Yeah.
And they'll ask you what you did. And when you're posting on your account for the right reasons, like some people get a bit embarrassed, like I don't want to gloat. And I'm like, no, post it, it's good. If you've seen a beautiful sunrise and you've been out for a run, post it because someone will eventually go, hey, I noticed you go down to the run club on Saturday, I've been watching it for 6 months, I don't think I fit. And they go, no, you do fit, I'll pick you up.
Yeah.
That's when you start leading by example.
Yeah.
You don't have to beg people anymore.
And that's the power of community as well, right? How important is that community for you and for everybody else, you know? And I guess there's like this power of healing in community as well within your group, you know?
Yeah, look, if you look at my journey and my history in trying to get sober, the reason I couldn't get sober the first time many years ago, because I tried to do it on my own. I didn't want to be a burden. I wanted to take a shortcut. I figured I could fix it on my own. This time round, I realised I couldn't do it on my own. So I put myself in other people's hands. People that have gone down the path that I've been and become successful in living better lives, had a connection to themselves. And you can only do that around people, which is community. And if you look at our Saturdays like live therapy, you know, it's not, we don't encourage people to come and just dump, you know, we've had a few of that over the years, but...
Probably also necessary.
Yeah, look, it's just my thing with the dumping side of things, and I've been a big dumper over years, is that when you're not in a good state and you're unconscious, you just dump at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
But you think that's therapy. It's not. What we do now is if someone is about to dump, we direct them to the right help.
Yeah.
You know, we're not qualified in a lot of areas. And when you're around community, and my point of community is that everyone's got different stories and different things. They're at different stages in their life, and is that what happens on Saturdays when you come down and you talk to a stranger, they'll tell you something which is quite profound, and you don't expect to hear it, but it will help you look at your week and go, hang on, I've actually had a better week than this guy. He's had a really shit week. I'm complaining about how bad my week was. Mine actually, from the sound of his week, I've actually done pretty well. And all of a sudden, these conversations start flowing, and it's not a competition on who's had the better week. People just open up because they feel safe and they're being vulnerable. And by them being vulnerable, they're healing. And all of a sudden people start relating to people's stories.
Yeah.
So like they say in AA, don't look for the differences, listen for the similarities.
Yeah.
And that really sits with me. And I listen to people and they start telling me what's going on, and I'm like, oh God, what was I complaining about yesterday? Why, I was holding on to something that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And so, community is important because it's face to face. It's giving your time to something without asking for anything in return. Community should be something that's sustainable. It should be regular. It should be reliable. And it should be accessible for everyone. Mm. And I think that, in busy times and coming out of lockdowns and things like that, we get so caught up and swept up with things that aren't important that we forget to prioritise our community connection. Sometimes we feel like we've got to go to, a fancy retreat or go and sit in silence in the mountains with a bunch of monks, which, don't get me wrong, is awesome. But my concern with that stuff is, how did you let yourself get to a point where you just need to go and hit the eject button and you need to get on a plane and fly out of here? What aren't you doing day to day that's not allowing you to release stress? And I haven't had a feeling in many years where I've actually just had enough of everyone and everything and had to get on a plane. Yeah. Because I give myself space every day. I know how to tap out. I know how to give myself a break. I know how to say no to things if I need to prioritise rest. I meditate every day, minimum 1, but mostly 2. I get in the ocean every day. I try and get enough sleep. I get up in the dark and do the coffee club. I love doing it. So I'm doing all these things that give me purpose.
You found the tools that work for you, right?
And so when I do go away, I really appreciate it. It's it's nice. It's a nice thing to have. But when I feel like I'm desperate to get away from everyone and everything, it's like, okay, what aren't you doing? And community is there to help as a sounding board for people. Yeah. It's a way of helping people connect. And there's so many different variations of community, and it's, it's open to interpretation. Yeah. My version of community, I'll always stand by this, it's giving your time to something greater than you. Mm-hmm. Simple. And that could look like anything, something that's greater than you. And that's, for me, why this works. And, when people ask me to jump in and help with other things, if I don't have the time, I can say no without feeling bad. Yeah, yeah. I think the commitment that I give to what I do, whether it's enough or not, is up for debate, but it gives me purpose. It's helping other people. It's inspiring other people to maybe carry on our message, create their own community, their own run club or their own swim club. Yeah, yeah. It's that snowball. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think the importance of community, again, is totally underrated. Yeah. I think it's just crucial, right? I mean, we are, as human beings, I think we are community beings, we've always grown up in communities. It's just in this day and age that it's a bit more segregated, and finding those places where people come together, it's good for the soul. Well, you look at, we live in a world full of technology, and the scary part, and I'm very open about this, is that we live on phones and tablets, and it worries me that our kids are glued to them. And I've got friends who've got kids. I love them to death, but when you try and talk to them, you don't get any sense out of them, because they are completely glued to information on a screen. They're not learning how to connect. I can look into someone's eyes and see the way they're standing or the way they walk towards me, and I can say, "Hey, you okay? You look like you're dragging your knuckles. Your eyes look a little bit low today. You sound tired. You got dark rings under your eyes. What's going on?" Our next generation are not getting those tools, because if you're not around people, because you're on the fly all the time, you're busy, and no idea what you're busy doing, and you're stuck in front of screens. Don't want to go to work. I want to work from home. I don't want to go to the office. I want to connect. They're missing that important connection of really understanding what's going on around them. Yeah, yeah. And so their connections, there is still connection, but it's surface level. Yeah. Yeah. Where myself, if I've got something I need to resolve with someone, I'd rather do it face to face. If I do a podcast, I'd rather do it face to face. I've done a few on Zoom and they suck. Yeah. I'd rather sit in a room with someone. Nicer. It's so much nicer. And what that comes down to is, as human beings, we crave physical and face to face connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And community, going back to it, is about connection. It's connection, you know, it's face to face. And it's important, and we have our work cut out for us over the next period of time with the age of, you know, all these advancements in technology, that it's going to be more work to try and keep people together face to face.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it really isn't. And with that is opportunity. The easy thing to do is talk to someone on screen. Hard thing is get them together. You get them together and you'll get the best out of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Trent, having gone through a lot of dark times yourself, you know, and come out the other side of it, why do you think that deep personal and collective healing is really important in this day and age?
Look, it's important if you want to have a good life. Some people don't know that they're struggling because they might have a lot of materialistic things. They might have money and they might have a job and they might have a car and all these nice things, and that sometimes can mask whether they're happy or not. For me, it was going through trauma. It was hitting a rock bottom for me to understand the importance of, you know, your mental, physical and spiritual health. And, you know, your lens changes. What I thought was important, you know, 20 years ago, you know, on how you were seen in the public eye or seen amongst your peers, today is irrelevant. You know, what matters for me today is how I see myself and how I feel. So, you know, things that make me feel good, I keep going back for more. There's still an addictive personality there, but that connection, you know, the sunrises, you know, as I said, like in over 3 years, I haven't missed a sunrise. I have a profound connection to the sun. I love seeing it first thing in the morning. I have a profound connection to the ocean. And I can only experience that when I have a higher state of consciousness. I see the importance and I crave it. You know, and that allows me to connect to the right people. You know, allows me to not necessarily disconnect, but veer away from things that I don't relate to. That could be relationships, it could be work. You know, we're energy and we attract, you know, like-minded energy. And one thing that I learnt many years ago I was doing some energy healing is, you know, this gentleman said to me, Rudy, he said, look, you know, our consciousness is required to evolve. And, you know, and as human beings, we should be evolving. And, you know, if you talk about the Vedic laws of, you know, creation, maintenance and destruction, we need to try and spend most of our time in creation, you know, and that's upskilling or relationships, or it could be your physical, mental and spiritual work that you need to do every day. You know, spirituality for me is being connected to myself, believing in a higher power, believing there's something out there that wants the best for me, and believing that, you know, as things unfold and happen, they're happening for a reason. I don't question them. You know, the physical element is like, what do I need to do to, as I get older, to be able to do the things I'm passionate about, like running and swimming and, you know, but moving in a way that I enjoy it too. So when I do train, I train with friends. When I go to the run club, to feel free, and I run to connect to myself and I run to connect to the people around me. I go surfing with friends because it's fun. And then, you know, the mindfulness side of things, that's like, you know, it's again, letting go. It's releasing stress. It's being okay with who I am. It's being able to sit still. You know, it's being able to rest. It's being able to be kind to myself. And that's the mindfulness side of things. And it sounds like a lot of work, but it's not, because it brings me joy and I found love in it all. And, you know, it allows me to look after myself. It allows me to be able to care for people around me and lead by example. And it allows me to make my contribution back to community. So all those elements are really key. And you'll only, if you haven't found them later in life, you're probably going to hit a wall or a rock bottom to try and find it. You know, you need to go through that trauma to go, right, I thought I had a good life, I thought I had it all, but I was unhappy. You know, so sometimes, and I say this a lot, you know, and the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, and you see some people look like they got it all. I'm passionate about helping those people, because you think we want to help the people that are down and out, but there's people out there look like they've got it all, they're really unhappy, and they're going through a lot. They're no different. You know, we're all on the same playing field, and I think that's where I've learned a lot, that I don't judge anymore. You know, I have empathy, and I just sit back and let things happen. You don't have to react to everything. And that's for me where I became more spiritual. It's like, I just need to stay in my lane. Keep focusing on me, and everything else sort of works itself out.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Trent, thank you so much for
Thanks,
our conversation today. I absolutely loved it. We could keep talking.
Yeah, it's awesome.
We probably will once the mics are gone.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So the 3 main pearls of wisdom that I'm taking away from our conversation today is, besides like all the amazing things that you've said, obviously, the first one is you're responsible for yourself. And I know it seems like a little bit like an obvious one, but I think it's just such an important one to remind people of, that nobody can really make the decisions for them or take their pain away or make changes for them, that they're really responsible for their own life and for showing up for themselves and making the changes that they would like to see in their lives.
Yeah.
The second one is we all experience darkness.
Yes.
Sometimes it can seem like, we're the only ones going through something, but other people have gone through it before. And if it's not that, they have gone through something else. But we've all had our dark moments in life, and we're all going through our own challenges. So knowing that and being okay with that and sitting with that and working through that so that we can come into the light, I think is really important. And that's something that the Run Club does so beautifully as well, starting in the dark and then running into the light. And then the last one is the importance of community and, really trying to find your tribe, the people that you resonate with, the people that are values aligned, the people that are supporting you and holding you up, even though we know that you have to do the work yourself. But, find the community. It is such an important way of just being in this world, having people around you that you can really trust and rely on as well.
Yeah, perfect. Spot on.
Amazing. So, Trent, tell us how people can get in touch with you.
Sure.
And how they can get involved if they want to.
So through Instagram, we are at, and it's THE_440, the 440. We do have a website, which is 440runclub.com, so 440runclub.com. My Instagram handle is Trent Knox, TRENTKNOX. But if you're in Sydney, best way to come and see us is in person, and it's 5 a.m. sharp at Bronte Beach, and you meet at the bottom of the car park. Best to get there around between 4:30 and 4:45 because we start on time and open to walkers, runners and shufflers, and we have babies and dogs and all sorts of things. So yeah, every Saturday, rain, hail or shine, 52 weeks a year.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, do get in contact with Trent if what you've heard today spoke to you, and if you feel like some early morning hill sprints in Bronte. I'm heading overseas like soon. This podcast will come out just before I come back, but I'll be back in September, so I'll see you back on the track then.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. I really hope you got something out of this episode today. It might have inspired you to, be more vulnerable, search for your own community, or come along to the 440 Run Club on a Saturday in Bronte. Please do share the podcast with your family, your friends, or anyone who you think might benefit from this information. I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.